But what happened was prices went up so badly that all of a sudden you couldn't afford to live on one income. And you go into debt. And when you go into debt, that causes problems in the marriage, and you don't want that.
But I feel like that separation of when women were no longer the financial responsibility of the husband is
Right.
when that's when husbands were no longer able to fully take care of it
Well,
anymore.
it was a process. It was a slow process that began with the women's movement in the
And that's where
60s.
we're at today with
Uh-huh.
women bosses and we don't need
Yeah.
men. This is where
Yeah,
that's where
and
that
they've
stems
screwed
from.
the pooch on that one.
But Cyrax, welcome. Long time no see.
Hey,
Hi, Jacob. Hi, Mud Rabbit. Can you guys hear me? Do I have a shitty
yeah,
mic?
it's sketchy, but we'll manage.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you well enough.
Can you hear us well?
Yes. I can hear
Okay.
you guys very well.
You had posed what you were saying. I'm going back over it. What do
I'm
you
gonna pull
think
it
we
up.
can't do what our parents were able to do? Buy a house, live off one parent income, take kids, etc. Yeah. We were still able to take vacations and we were still able to do things, but I'll tell you how we did it because I worked a job 60, sometimes 70 hours a week in season. He worked hard too. We both worked in the service industry. What we did when we came back to the States and we saw how expensive everything was, we bought a duplex, not a single family home. We bought a duplex and we moved into one side of it while we fixed the other side. We fixed that side first. As soon as that side was fixed up, we rented it out. Now, the rent that you get from that tenant covers your mortgage. Now you don't have your mortgage to worry about. You see
Okay,
how
so
that
that
works?
so break this down a little bit slower because okay,
The trick is to get
easy. No, no, no.
somebody else.
It's easy. It's easy to understand. Renting is easy money.
No, you're
How
you're
did
not
you
renting.
afford? How did no, no. Setting up a rental property for
Hmm.
somebody else is easy money. My question is, how easy was it to actually buy a duplex? Because that's the part that I'm looking at. Like that is not even
Mm-hmm.
fathomable today. Like,
Right,
of course,
right.
I would love to buy an apartment building and stay in one of the apartments, and then have people rent from me.
Find a way to have your mortgage covered.
I'm saying, how do you get
That's
something like
yeah, that's
because
the way
getting
we did it.
financing on something like that today,
We got
or
financing and we were newly back in the States, so we didn't have a track record. It was a little difficult for us, but we both had jobs. And when you both have jobs and you're both working and bringing in an income, you're more likely to get a loan than if it's just your husband.
in Gonzo,
Even if you only have a part-time job.
and
But
Gonzo
have
also, it's no relation. Those are different Cyraxes.
mhm.
Cyrax is a different entity. She is no chance from the Goblin of Akron.
Yeah.
She
And
is
she's
not
a
that
lot prettier
silent
too, so
Cyrax.
don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if you can establish that you have a steady income, even if the wife only works part-time while the kids are in school or daycare or whatever, it's that dual income that helps you get that loan. And then once you get that loan, you get that duplex. And then you make sure that, you fix it up, you rent it out, and the rent you collect from that person pays your mortgage. That is one of the biggest expenses off your back. Now you have a little cash to
Aren't you,
play with.
aren't you taxed different depending on if you're married as well?
Yeah,
Is it more
you
financially
pay
beneficial?
I believe you pay more if you're both working full time. You pay more for if you're single, I think. But if you have children, there's a tax credit. I think at one point it was $300 per child. So there are incentives. One thing I would suggest,
So
if you're
hold on,
going to do that,
I
you
was
need
muted
to.
in the hail. I gotta answer you on that.
Okay.
So the tax credit. So the tax credit for states is between 150 and $300 depending on your
Hmm.
state. The
300
federal
here.
level the federal level can be anywhere from 2 grand to 5 grand, and it's based on income.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I was going to say, if you can do that, if you can manage to just get one duplex, that's your starting off point. You just have to find a way, to make it that somebody takes the biggest payment you got off your back so that you have some disposable income to take care of other things. You have to budget tightly. And the tighter you budget, the more you can save. And then you buy another duplex. And then you rent the one out that you were living in and start the process over again. And you get a couple of those. And now you have income. If you lose your job, you've still got that rent coming in. You've got money to pay the taxes at the end of the year. You've got money to affect repairs. But you can't spend it.
People don't have enough skin to get into the game nowadays.
No, but we didn't either. We came back from the islands with nothing.
But I'm just saying, like in general, like there's no one that's going to give somebody out a lot. Like, yeah, I could point to 5 places right now that I could flip, like because I have enough personal experience with fixing houses where I wouldn't even have to hire out the labor.
We
I could
did
fix
it
the houses
ourselves
myself and rent them, and wouldn't because I grew up. My parents grew up. Well, I grew up with my parents around the time that. Flipping houses was a big thing and people were talking about it all the time. My parents were listening to fucking Trump on radio and DVDs and CDs that they bought long before he was ever a president. And that's why I say my parents are Trumpers. Like they're legit Trumpers. I'm not a Trumper. And they what did they have? The finance of the deal or what was it called?
Art of the Deal.
The Art of the Deal. They had that shit on audio tape, and they used to play it in the fucking minivan when I was driving around with them. My mom would be driving, and they had.
That's a lot of good financial advice that he gave.
It's not bad, but at the same time, I still recognize that the guy took advantage of the system. He didn't do good. He took advantage of the system.
Of course, and he admits it. Then that's what I'm trying to tell you. You have to.
And that's fine. I want to know that there's a healthy. I want to know that there's a healthy route for everybody. You know what I mean?
That is a healthy route for everybody if they choose
taking
to
advantage
take
of the system isn't a healthy route, and everybody can't do it because otherwise the system would break.
I'm not talking about taking advantage of the system in a negative way. There are programs out there. There are ways out there that you can do this, taking advantage of the system because the options are there.
But it's different with Donald Trump. When I use that example with Donald Trump, I'm talking about like declaring bankruptcy and then your assets not being affected because you declared bankruptcy. That's a loophole in the system.
Yeah, I have a friend that used that
taking advantage, but that's not like the same as taking advantage of grants and opportunities that are there that people don't know about. I think that's great.
No, but we're
people
talking about
those.
We're talking about a family trying to get ahead.
Yes.
And we came back to this country with nothing, absolutely nothing. We had the clothes on our back and we had our stuff that was going to arrive in a trailer, and we had a very, very small savings account, which probably would have bought us groceries for a couple of weeks, but we had both had to go to work right away. And we were fortunate in that we had a friend who had a house that was empty at the time, one he used to live in, and he let us stay there for a few months until we were able to both get jobs and get established. Now, we still hadn't had a savings, but we did go to get a loan for that first duplex, and we got it based on the fact that both of us were working. And we didn't have credit scores back then. You had references. They would go through your, back then, if you paid off your credit cards regularly, you had good credit. Now it's the opposite. Unless you carry a balance on your credit card, they can't tell what your credit is.
Yeah, you have to have. That's the crazy thing. You can pay something off in fucking one day in cash, and you don't establish a credit score. And you could show that you're financially well off and doing okay and spending money right. Yeah. And what they would rather have is
they want you in debt
for fucking 6 years.
Yeah, they want you in debt. But back then, when they looked at our credit history, which was not a credit score at the time, they saw that we didn't have debt, that we paid our bills regularly, that, we stayed above board and we both worked hard. And they gave us a loan for that duplex. And we did exactly that. And it launched us. It takes a few years to go. And we took it on a 15-year mortgage. And we worked to pay it off while we rented it out. And look at where he did from that. He went from there.
I don't think this explains Xyrax's question of how our parents have it different than us. I really do think it's different for us because these things aren't even feasible.
Well, I
Like
think
some of
that's
these
the
financial things aren't even feasible.
I think
Like, of
that's the
course, there's
general
a great
trend, but
business
my mother was a
opportunity.
single mother with 2 children and she worked 3 jobs.
And I think, and don't get me wrong, I think there's different business
Hmm.
opportunities that we have nowadays that our parents never had. Like, especially with random things like YouTube and the internet in general. Like, if you have a good voice, you can go on and voice audiobooks and get paid for it like a
Right.
regular wage. It just
Well, we didn't have that stuff
depends.
back
Oh
then.
yeah, there's all kinds of weird stuff that we have an advantage of, but
Yeah.
I guess it's with anything when it comes to being financially well off, you either have to be some of the first people on the bandwagon or be ahead of the curve with everybody else or invent something. Like
Right.
those are really the only ways to really pull yourself away from the crowd.
Or not have shame and, and take advantage of, I guess you could sort of say, or I should say, like scam, because that's how people make money too, by scamming others.
Yeah. Well, and
And
it's because yeah, there's always going to be a group of people out there. We were talking about telemarketers earlier. There's always going to be a group of people out there trying to take advantage of some old person that isn't
mhm.
operating right or people that don't know any better.
Yeah,
There's
too
always
smart. Yeah.
predators. There's always predators in society. Doesn't matter if you're talking about on a sexual level or a financial level. There's always going to be people out there trying to get a one up on somebody else, even if it's just to make them feel better.
Hmm.
Do you think it's because everything's just so saturated, like that's why there's just, although people like to say, yeah, there's so much more opportunities and, in today's time. But I don't know. To me, it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of opportunities.
I would say no. I would say it's not oversaturated. I think the biggest problem that people have nowadays is exposure. What the internet gives you is there's an audience for everybody. And I really do agree with that. Like if you can find your audience, it's out there. Because you'd be surprised how many people are into how many weird fucking things that I'm totally not into and I don't know why there's an audience for it in general. But if you can actually dial into that audience, it's totally possible. Um, I I don't know. I think there's an audience for everybody, and you can oversaturate an area. Like for an example, I can think of an oversaturated thing that happened in my area. My uncle, quote unquote, this guy I worked for a while, who's related to my aunt, but he's not technically my uncle. I've just called him my uncle. He started a bunch of bounce house businesses, and he started two himself, and he was running those. And then he helped two other local companies start them up, and then he sold his business and then signed a disclosure not to start a new business for like a year or something like that. And then he started another business, all bounce house businesses, all in the same area that are still operating today. Yes, I do think it's possible to oversaturate an area with certain things, but depending on what you're selling and what you're doing, you can spread out to the audience that's looking for what you're looking to give out. But it's all about distribution, it's supply and demand, like we were talking about earlier. The market's the same. It's figuring out where the supply and demand lines up with what you're offering.
Yeah, but it always has to start with some kind of money, right? To start up a business, and it's like, where do you find the money to start up a business? Do you go to the bank, apply for like a personal loan, or I heard a lot of people say you can write them off. I'm like, I'm not so sure about that. When you write them off, it's not like you get the whole thing back. You only get a certain percentage back, right?
Well, you apply for a business loan, and there are different qualifications for a business loan than there are for a homeowner's loan.
Yeah. And then, and to break that down even more, and this is just from my personal experience with starting a landscaping company, um, no one's going to give you financial advice unless you hire somebody to give you financial advice. So, I had to figure out insurance for my company, and I didn't know what the best insurance was for a landscaping company. I looked at what it was for chainsaw insurance, chainsaw insurance, like anybody that's operating a chainsaw on a regular basis, their insurance is different from the regular landscaper. If I'm doing home construction, it's different insurance than a regular landscaper. If I open an LLC and cover multiple businesses, it's different than just individual insurance specific towards one business. And unless you hire an accountant, the person that's even selling you the insurance won't explain each one to you and how it covers your business, because it's not their job to, and they could get in trouble for misinformation if they say the wrong thing. So they're not there to help you, honestly. And depending on the type of business you're running, until you set up a clientele, I would tell people to do it under the table until you establish a clientele where it's actually able to be a business. Because a side hustle has to turn into a business, because it's because you're too busy where other things are taking it up, and this is more beneficial for you. Whether it's because of personal enjoyment or it's enough to get you along. That's what happened with landscape. I was doing landscaping on the side. And then when I had enough customers where I was like, oh, I don't have time to do my regular jobs where I'm not making as much money. I need to be doing this full time. And then I got to a point where I was like, why am I running ads? I don't have enough time to get to the people that I have. I need to stop running ads. There's no reason for me to advertise to people. I don't have enough time. And I found myself at a weird position where as a boss, I don't know if I don't like the working class that is out right now, or if I just haven't found a good mesh for my company. But my expectations for people is really high. I pay people really well. I'll pay somebody $20 an hour cash on the books. Like it's like I could either do it on the books or I could do it off. And it's a good profit for a starting level position. Not a lot of people are walking into a job and making $20 an hour. And I will do that as long as somebody shows me that they're willing to learn and then picking things up over time. I can't find people like that. So I would rather keep my business small where I know I can keep myself busy rather than expanding and trying to take on more, because I think it'll risk my business's name and quality, because I think it'll go down if I don't have the oversight. But I don't know. It's a weird balance you have to play, and it all based on what kind of business you want to run and what kind of insurance you need. And then once you start dealing with banking and being able to actually financially accept the money, then you'll have to open an, depending on if you already have an LLC or not, you'll have to open a bank account associated with said account. There's some weird things you can do if you want to play on the border of sovereign citizen, and you can make some fun games where if you named your business your name and collected money under your name, you could play some interesting games, because most people aren't smart enough to name a company their name.
Yeah, but sometimes that could get you into trouble too.
It could. It depends on how much money you're getting from each individual person. If it doesn't, if each individual person isn't paying you more than a certain amount a year, then they don't reach a threshold to even draw attention. It's a weird game you can play, but it's a different financial situation tax situation for every single state. So
it really is. Every state is different.
The headache. It's a headache to try to figure it all out, and I think they make it too small for too hard for small business.
Yeah, this is why we did duplexes and got a job, because it was less of a headache.
Oh yeah, and the other thing is unions that were established in like the 1920s, they now strangle out small business because they make it harder for small business, because they would rather you have a union person on there that's considered more qualified when they don't even necessarily have to be better at the job. They just took more classes, and it doesn't even actually mean they know the job better.
Yeah, they end up sitting at a desk instead of dealing with customers or the business.
Well, that, and you get the union dynamic of this old man's worked here for 25 years, and this young guy's worked here for 1 year. The young guy's the one
you
doing
can't
all the
fire
work.
me.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't fire me.
It's not based on quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many aspects of opening a business where it could be great.
Yeah.
But
But you need an accountant.
yeah,
You really do.
You need somebody that in your accountant, like everybody thinks an accountant is out of their realm of paying for something. Your accountant will pay for himself if he's good, he or she.
Yeah.
If they just in taxes alone, they could pay for themselves. They don't for their services.
Yeah. And if you decide to do real estate, you don't need the accountant. You need a real estate attorney.
Yep.
So you always need a professional. No matter what you do, you're going to need professionals.
Yep. And it's easier than trying to figure those things out yourself.
Yeah, oh boy, yes,
that was always the biggest thing for me when I was younger was I wanted to learn everything and I wanted to learn how to do it myself so I could have my own hands around it. It's just like, yeah, that works to a certain aspect.
Yeah, but then you end up doing everything and you don't have time to pay attention to the things you need to do, and it becomes a giant headache. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do have to rely on professionals. Plus, it's so much easier for somebody to explain the rules to you before you break one.
True. What were we saying to Noelle the other day? It's easier to ask for forgiveness than.
Our big mistake was we had a tenant that wasn't paying his rent. So my husband went over there under the pretext to fix the front door because he had broken the front door. And these were the metal doors, the hurricane storm doors. So he went over, he took the door off the hinges, and he just didn't go back. We found out later we weren't supposed to do that, but this guy was a pain in the butt.
Yeah, no, that's probably a crime.
Yeah, this was at the time, this was the second time we rented to somebody, and this is when we realized we needed an attorney to draw us up a proper lease, and we needed to learn how to get with the county sheriff for evictions. And yeah, there's always something.
Because back in the day, I mean, you could rent a room to a young guy that wanted to stay in your garage. It didn't have to have running water and all of this other, like,
yeah, you just needed a bed and a toilet. That's it.
Exactly. And then you could pick the price. It wasn't, I don't know. I feel like there was a lot more wiggle room back in the day than
there was nowadays. Before all the technology. Well, listen, it's getting real late here, and I need to get off because my phone's going to die. So everybody have a lovely evening.
Yeah, thank you for joining.
Okay, I hope we gave you some ideas that maybe you can work with.
You definitely did. Thank you.
Or, just change them around to how they work for you.
Hopefully it was a little deeper than a Simon conversation.
Yeah. Okay, good night. Love you guys. Bye.
Have a good night.
I'm not even going to go there with Simon. Although I did have a good conversation with him yesterday.
No, Simon has good conversations. I don't think Simon has bad conversations. I just think he doesn't realize how surface level he thinks he thinks he's a lot deeper than he is sometimes. And I try to bring him back to reality. He'd be like, "Oh, we were in a really good conversation." And then so-and-so interrupted us. And I was like, "No, Simon, we weren't talking about anything. We were just rambling about a topic, but we weren't actually getting anywhere with it." I mean, I think he makes a lot of correlations with relationships that stem back to a past trauma that he has with his ex-wife that hasn't been healed. And literally everything we talk about stems back to his ex's relationship. I don't know his ex's name. I don't know anything about her besides Simon brings her up every time he talks to me.
He always brings her up. I mean, which is fine, he always, he tends to use her as a reference point, again, which is fine. But my biggest thing with him is is whenever he says, "Oh, most people don't know this. Oh, you dumb motherfuckers don't know this." I'm like, stop doing that. Maybe you don't know.
Assuming that your audience is naive to it. Well, it's also, you're using this as a talking point, but this is very anecdotal if you're using this one relationship to justify all relationships. You can't tell me, because he was on here with me and Tony, and he was like, men have never done anything bad to women. This is what I thought you wanted to talk about with me. Was he said something about women had never done anything bad, or men had never done anything bad to women. And I said, have you ever heard the term deadbeat dad? And he was like, yeah, that was a term brought up by women, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, there was like dads that were leaving their kids behind, and there was like law put into place. And that's why we have child support now. And it's because people abandon their kids and they aren't good parents. Like and it happens in both sexes. It's not just men, but that's why in places like Illinois, California, and New York, if you're a male and you have a kid with somebody, doesn't matter if you're on the birth certificate or not, you when you say you're not with the person and you're not together anymore, but you want to have visitation with your own child, you get visitation, not custody. That immediately comes with it. Doesn't matter if you're the birth father or not, or if you're on the birth certificate or not. It makes no difference. In those states, you get to visit your child. You don't get to co-parent your child. You have to establish the ability to co-parent your child, because women get the sole rights over the men in those 3 states 100% of the time. If the woman is on drugs, the government will pay for her to get a house. They will pay for her to get off drugs. They will help her get sober, all while letting her keep her child. It has to get to an extreme point before the child ever gets taken away from the woman for any reason in those 3 states specifically. And what it usually comes out to is men get, Wednesdays and every other weekend, unless they work out some kind of deal outside of that, and then paying child support on top of that. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And that's why I have so many problems with the law. I think the laws are like 40 years behind, especially in the most liberal states.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I tried to relate some of these ideas with you, because I think our states are similar, where I understand your state's laws pretty well. And I would assume because you understand your own, you would understand mine pretty well, because Illinois and California are structured pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's wild.
Now, regarding the child support, the visitation thing, I think now I don't know much about the child support system, but I would assume that the reason why it's like that is because they're not married, right? So, say if they were married, I don't think he would. There would be visitation rights. They'll just be, yeah, we have custody. But if you're just, if you just knock up a chick and you want to be part of their, the kid's life, then that's where the whole visitation comes in. Now, I may be wrong, but I'm just assuming it's because of that, or does it not matter?
I can break that down on a couple levels. So if you were married, you would still start with visitation, regardless. It doesn't matter. I think it does make a difference, and I think that law originally was set up for dads that take off. That's why I said I think this law is about 40 years behind of what it's for. I think the laws were set up for deadbeat dads, and that's why I actually call those people deadbeat dads. People that were leaving their kids in the past are what established the laws that we have today, and that's why they're like that. And I don't think the laws have caught up, but yeah, it doesn't really make a difference if you're married, single, anything like that. Yeah, I think when any 2 people, like adults, decide that they're going to have sex, I feel like most of them know that it could lead to a baby. And if we live in a generation where people don't know that sex leads to a baby, I feel like, I don't know, maybe our education system is doing something wrong. But yeah, no, I think a unique strain of DNA is created when 2 people create a baby together. And I think both of them have rights to it. And I think it's important for a kid to have both parents in their life, not visitation with a father Wednesday and every other weekend. I think that's detrimental to a kid's development. And yeah, I
Sure.
just there's I don't know, there's just so many levels to it where it's not beneficial to the children more than anything. They're probably the ones that are harmed the most.
This is why I'm for mandatory and paternity testing. I think I don't. I think we should, especially in liberal states. I think we should have that because once you establish, paternity, then I think then only I think you wouldn't have to worry about visitation. You would just have to worry about custody. Because if that's your child, then you don't want custody. Then then you could go to like visitation, right? But um, see, even that's like weird because if that's your kid and you just want visitation, you don't want custody. That's I don't know. Should we punish someone like that? Well, punish is sort of strong, but should we, I can't even think of a word. I guess we have the freedom to do whatever we want, right? Sort of, And so if he doesn't want custody, he just wants visitation, that's fine. And then I guess that's where the whole paying child support comes in. Um, I don't know. I understand men's grief when it comes to the child support system, but sometimes I feel like um, not that it's not, valid or anything, because it is valid, because some men have been wronged by the system, and of course, wronged by women, by, by abusing the system. But but I do feel like that that something needs to be done to satisfy both, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think the system has its own flaws. If you look at how child support is set up, so child support is set up based on income, but it's a percentage that's actually set. So in Illinois, um, it's a weird incentive based thing. So for women, it's actually more beneficial for you to have kids with multiple different men and not to have more than one kid with one man. It's actually better for you to have multiple fathers if you want to make more money out of
Right.
wedlock.
If you had them like yearly, right? Because in California we do have the law where like if you have a kid a year by the same dad, then you're not going to get anything for like the second or third kid or something like that. And so yes, if
So
you have by
so what
different
happens
dads,
is
then it doesn't apply. I'm sorry, Jake, go ahead.
so in Illinois, the first kid is 25% of income, and that's set at the time that they establish um, uh, visitation and all that, and uh, child support, and they base it on whatever income you're making at the time, and it would be 25% of that income, and it's based on the first child. So what happens is, say you have four children with four different dads, you're getting 25% of the income for each child. If you have four children with one dad, the percentage goes down about 10% per kid. So if you're having multiple children with the same father, the percentages keep going down and you wouldn't make as much money. So it's incentivized for women to have multiple partners and children with different people rather than being married to the same person when it comes to financial gain. You would make a lot more money to have kids with five different dads, um, according to the government, than you would to be with the same father and father the same amount of kids, or mother the same amount of kids, I guess, raise the same amount of kids.
Okay, so then wouldn't it make sense for the guy to marry her if he's going to have multiple kids by her?
Um, yes, if he's worried she's going to leave him, I guess. If they think
Okay,
they're going to be together, he might not be. He might not be. I mean, I guess it's a tax break for both of them to get married, but I guess that would depend on a modern couple's view on marriage.
okay, now I see why the men say women, are so quick to divorce. Okay.
It's more financially beneficial for them. But it also depends on your state. It's not like that in every state. It's like that in California. It's like that in Illinois, for sure. Like I know those two states are like that. I can't say the same about New York. New York's kind of on a borderline with it. Some of their stuff is a lot more liberal, but not all of it. But other states fall in between. But that's why I was talking to you about this, is because you can relate to it in California. And yeah, I really do think these laws are important. And Simon touches on some of these topics, and that's why I actually talk about it with him, because I think a red pill culture is a real thing. I do think men's rights are shat on constantly, and people don't actually realize it's happening. But I don't think that men don't need women, and that women are, like, I don't think of women as a weaker sex or anything like that. I think of us as yin and yang. And we try to bring the government in, and it makes it an issue and complicates it for everybody.
Okay, so now, are you in favor of marriage legally?
For what?
No, just marriage. Like, are you for marriage legally? Because whenever I say that, they always go, legally, as in like, because they think that when you get married legally, that's like bringing in the government. And so, are you in favor of marriage legally?
Is it? I guess I would. That's why I said for what. Is it because your religion tells you it's what you're supposed to do? Because you're trying to get financial breaks? Like, what is your point of your marriage?
Well, isn't it just? Oh, I thought it was just like, love. That's what you're supposed to do, right? When you marry someone, you're supposed to either, go to the courthouse or, do it at a church.
I think you can make a commitment to somebody without having a piece of paper. I just wonder what the purpose of the piece of paper is. If it makes somebody feel better, like that's still a valid reason. Because I mean, it's kind of like the idea that I don't know if you got this when you were younger, but your parents always told you after you get done with high school, you go to college. That's just what kids do. After high school, they go to college. And not everybody thinks that way these days. Some people think college is a waste of money. I don't know. Why would you go do that? Why would you go invest all of your money into a big wedding and all this and that? Or why wouldn't you just go get married at the courthouse and just get the piece of paper if that's what people want? Like it depends on what you're looking for out of a marriage, I think. And then if we throw in another financial side, what if we talk about prenuptial agreements and what happens after divorce? Because that's a whole other side that people don't think about when they talk about how men get screwed over. And you don't see it a lot in women in divorce. You don't see a lot of men walking away with 50% of like alimony payments or some shit because they're accustomed to a certain style of living because their wife made so much money. It's usually women are getting paid alimony payments because they used to be married to a professional, whatever, insert actor, sports position, anything like that.
See, this is where like I feel, that which I disagree on. The fact that people uses celebrities' life, as an example for the average working class, right? Because their rules definitely do not apply to us, and our rules do not apply to theirs. Nobody.
Well, but celebrities are on a financial level where it's not really understandable to us. But so to think about how much money you have, now think about half of that. Like you're talking about a smaller amount of money, but like I think about how much money I have that I make personally with my business. And then if I was to cut that in half and say, okay, now you can only make half of that. The other half is going to payments because you were with somebody. Well, she was with you. She got accustomed to that type of money coming in. So regardless, now that you guys are separated because you didn't set up a prenuptial agreement prior to your marriage, you're now stuck sending your wife payments, not child support payments, your ex-wife. You could have a new wife now that you're paying for, or you have to stay single because you can't afford to have your ex-wife and a new wife.
This is what I
Who
feel
knows?
like, men do not think of the a woman in this. They don't take us into consideration that, like, I understand that, right? Yeah, you make a certain amount, and then half of that goes down the drain, so down the drain. But the thing is that, the reason why there's um payment to the women is because, like, was she not with you throughout, like, the ride? Did she not benefit you or add anything to your life during that
It's
ride?
not always. It's not always. There's some situations where the man had money before they even met the woman. Usually, like I said, it comes down to if they signed a prenuptial agreement or not. That's usually the divider. It doesn't matter if she supported him all throughout it or if she joined the bandwagon at the end of it after he was already famous. She's already been accustomed to said lifestyle. So she has to now get taken care of because she walked into that lifestyle and no longer has it anymore. It doesn't matter. Like if you get with somebody when they're poor and then you guys break up, then there's not anything to take away from that, regardless, because you were just used to that poor lifestyle. If at any point you were with somebody and got accustomed to a certain style of living that you can no longer afford by yourself, then you're financially obligated as an ex to actually help them with that. And that's why I said rarely it happens, but it happens for men as well. So say, I don't know, let's use J.K. Rowling as an example, the woman author. And we throw her into the mix and she breaks up with her husband and her husband says, well, I was with you the whole time you were writing books. I didn't help you write any of the books or anything like that, but I was supporting you emotionally. Do you think she's responsible for giving him any percentage of the work that she's done? I don't think, I personally don't think she is. Like, I think she's just as obligated to her advancement as well. But if she says, my husband did really help me with this writing or help me keep my sanity because we had 2 kids and he would help with the kids while I was writing. Like there's a lot of situations where I could think of where they would be like, no, my significant other helped me at the time. But
Why would you
if
not
nobody
reward
can point,
them, even though? Why would you not reward them though, even though you guys fell out of love, right? You should still reward them because, I mean, if you have kids, you were so like focused on work that it's because of your now ex partner. Without them, your kids wouldn't have grown up, right? Wouldn't be demanding of you, but because he or she, took care of the kids while you're able to, um, work on your endeavors. I think the partner deserves something, especially
somebody
if
could go. Let me give you another example of somebody that's more modern. So somebody could go marry Donald Trump right now and become his new wife, and she would be gifted something financially if they divorced, just because she married him in his situation right now, unless she had more money than him coming into it, or left
no,
with more money.
no,
That's
no,
how
I
it
don't
works.
think so.
That's what happens. I don't. I'm not saying that you think it's okay. I'm just saying it's a vast thing where at any point when you're with the other person, whether you contributed to it or not, that's what they send you off with because of what you got used to. Like, I wonder if it's different if, say you're with somebody like MC Hammer and you were with him the whole time he was financially successful, and then he went bankrupt and you were still with him. And then you guys got divorced after he was bankrupt when he no longer had any money. Would you still be financially liable to give her the money that she had back when you were doing well? Because that wouldn't make a lot of sense. I don't think they do that, but it doesn't work
Well,
like that in the reverse.
because he has nothing to give. Now, if he's has money,
Exactly.
then yes. But then see,
Then if
but
he
that's why,
has
like, I'm
money, he
talking,
should give it away, though.
give it away. No, like, it has to be reasonable, right? And I don't. I like to think that our courts are reasonable. The judges when they preside over cases like this, that they're reasonable, and so you know But the thing is that I'm focusing more on again us average people with the working class, and a lot of times kids don't come in until after marriage, right? And so um, and a lot of times when you get with somebody, you're not really the guy's not really established it, and neither is she, and so that's why I feel like she does deserve something because it's something that you guys built together. Even though she may not contribute it financially, she definitely contributed, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, by helping raise the kids and stuff like that. Because unless you don't want, you don't want the kids, then, fine. You could go off and start a new life if you want. But I'm sure he wants, he still wants the kids because she was there raising the kids. And I understand he had to pay the house and stuff like that, but that's because she was able to stay home and keep, everything in check for him to have a home, to come to. And so to just dismiss her as if she didn't do anything, I feel like that's definitely not fair to the women. Because then otherwise, why tell the women to stay home then? Why do the traditional lifestyle then?
Well,
Then
and that's
never.
also,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's also a balance to that. It's just like how much can you actually financially draw from somebody where they're no longer able to continue by themselves. Where if say say you have a husband that separates from, let's say two kids from two different moms, and he's a celebrity. So he made a good amount. So he's got to give a decent amount. It's based, like we said before, 25% based on each child. So you got what? Let's say 50% of his income is going to child support for two kids, and then trying to pay alimony on two different wives. Is he any longer able to sustain himself? Because that's the other thing that I've never understood with celebrities is if child support is based on your income, why is it that celebrities' children need more income to survive?
I mean, I don't know. I would
Or why
assume that
doesn't, or
like
why wouldn't
school.
something like that, if it was a system to benefit others, why wouldn't all of the extra be paid in to go to kids that actually need more support because their fathers or mothers aren't able to support them? You know what I mean? I feel like there's certain things where it's just like, no, I don't think um, uh, John Elway should pay $26,000 in child support a month, and then this person should pay less than 250. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense that that kid's only getting 250 a month, and the mother has to take care of the rest. But John Elway's kid, because he's a football player and he makes as much as he does, he gets 26,000 a month.
Well, see, the thing is, most, I'm sure majority of celebrity, that have kids, their kids are going to like private schools. Their kids are not going to no public school. It's very rare that they go to public school, right? And so because they go to private school, it costs a lot of
Yeah,
money.
I mean, yeah, and of course, other cost would instill because of that. Because as a celebrity, you have to have more privacy. You're probably gonna have security. You're gonna have a driver. You're probably gonna have a maid. Like there's, and then, but once you
I
start
don't know
throwing in
about
stuff
that.
like that, then once you start throwing in stuff like that, you go, oh wait, what are we paying the mom to do again? You said she was an at-home care provider prior to this, and now there's a maid, and now there's a driver. What does she do? There's a teacher that teaches them at school. Does she cook the meals? No, there's a cook.
But see,
Oh,
that's
okay,
the
so
choices they decided to make, though, right? That's their own personal
you know what I'm
choice.
saying.
That
So
they have,
so
I
so
get
say
that.
you're an NFL player, and your wife says, "Oh, I do all these things," and then the NFL player says, "Well, we have a chef, we have all of these things. What is it that you do, mom?" Like he's like, I pay for all
Point
these other
taken.
people to be
Yeah,
here.
point taken. But then that's what I'm saying. I'm sure, and I don't. I'm just guessing that she could be like, like you didn't want, you don't want me to do. You wanted a personal chef. You wanted this. You know, and so that's why we got it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I just think, I mean, if you have it that good, I don't know why you would want to divorce the man anyway.
I just feel
And
like
so
those are still. Oh, I agree. I think there's a lot of women and men that divorce for the wrong reasons. I also think there's plenty of people that get married for the wrong reasons. Um, I think
most definitely, yeah.
I think there should be like a marriage license, a child rearing license. Like honestly, I think a lot of people should think before they have sex and bring a kid into this world too, but it doesn't mean they're going to.
Yes.
But
Yes, I
yeah,
don't think
that's
that's
just the
the
world we live in.
yes. But see, the thing is, if men are having a problem, no, again, I'm not talking about celebrity because this celebrity doesn't apply to it because we don't make that much money and stuff. And so I'm thinking about, how to make sure, like, I would want,
It's
of
based
course,
on, but it's based on percentages. So the amount of money doesn't matter. Just think about it's just going to impact the people that are making less money more. So the average person, you're talking about financially ruining somebody. A celebrity, you might not financially ruin them. They might make enough where they can still get by.
well,
But
yep,
the
and,
average person, because the percentages stay the same in the states that I was talking about. When I'm talking about California or something like that, the percentages stay the same. Like I said, it's based on income. So the more income you make, the more floatable you are. The less income you have, the more those percentages are going to hurt you if it's going to another person that's not yourself.
but that's child support though, like that's not including alimony because working class people don't get alimony like that.
So that comes down to cost of living, like we were talking about with Mud Rabbit. It's harder for people to make enough to support. One income doesn't support a house anymore. So let's take one income and then subsidize some of the money going to the child for child support, as well as maybe alimony going to an ex-wife. And now on top of that, you also have to pay for your own place. Anybody else that's probably staying with you if you ever want to have another significant other, and then your own financial well-being on top of that. Plus, what you already pay. Like I said, for a celebrity, it might be easier. You might be able to get by because you make enough money, but the percentages stay the same. That's the crazy part.
Well,
It's
since
not
that's
based on.
it comes down to you making sure you make like the right choice, knowing the fact that you are part of. I'm not saying personally, but I'm just saying you as in general. Or I should say, a man would should know where like his living situation, his environment. So if if you're part of the working class, then you should make sure you make smart choices, right? Same goes for women. I mean, women is not people think like the single mom with kids is having it, living at large. She's not.
It depends. Depends. I don't think living large is um, ever the equation, but it is much easier for women to live cost free in a situation like that than it is for men. Like I said before, when a woman has a child, doesn't matter if she's addicted to heroin or something like that. In the states that I listed before, the government will help you. They'll buy you a place. They'll help you get off drugs. They'll send you to rehab. They'll do stuff like that. A father won't get those same treatments. They won't go, oh, you have a kid to worry about and you're raising this kid. We need to worry about this. We need to make sure you're sober and you got a nice place to live and, a vehicle to get around. Like all of that stuff is given to women and it's not given to men. And then I haven't even brought up the draft once yet.
Well, see, in that case, they're doing it for the sake of the baby, right? Not so much for her. They don't really care about her, but then because they don't want the kid to be part of, the state, they don't want, and so in order to help, to make sure that the kid, has someone as a guardian, then yeah, they're willing to pay for her to get clean and stuff like that, so that way she could work and start working and take care of her baby. Now for
No, they
the
will. They will pick. They will financially support the woman over the man every time. They won't even check. Like the man could be well off and they wouldn't have to worry about it. just sending the kid to the father, they won't even look into that situation. They would rather get the mom out of the bad situation first before they ever worry about sending custody to the father or anything like that. The mother has to make a lot of mistakes before she loses custody of her child. And then it goes to the father while she works on herself, or the government helps her or something like that. Most of the time, the government will hold the hand of the mother until they have to take the child away from the mother because it's not getting any better.
Well, see, usually when that happens, it's when the baby's so small, right? And so, and plus, because women are
It
mostly the
should it
caregivers for the
should be
kid.
when the baby's small. It should be when the baby's small, and that's what most of the cases are. Because hopefully, if a family's in the court system, this stuff gets taken care of when it's an infant, not when it's a kid in school or a teenager or something like that.
Right. And so that's where, of course, that's when a baby needs the mother the most. So I think that's the only reason why, if say
When
the
do you
baby,
think when do you think a baby needs the mother the most? What does that mean?
well, especially if she breastfeed. Of course, I'm talking about from infant to 5.
Breastfeeding isn't necessary
Right, it's not necessary, but it's better for the child though. And we can't keep giving powder to these
compared
kids.
to compared to what? Do you think it's better for, like, if you had to pick two scenarios? I'm going to give you a 50-50 that you just kind of presented me. Is it better to breastfeed or to not have a father around? Which one's more beneficial for the child?
Yeah, I think that's comparing apples to oranges though. You're,
Not though. It's
yes,
not though.
it
You were saying that a kid can't be separated from a mother at a certain time because it was an important time for the mother. But by placing that, you're saying it's okay for the father to be separated at that time, because that's the scenario we were talking about.
well, no, do you think
And that's why I made you break down what did the mother specifically need to be there for, because nutrient wise, you can go by Similac or something like that can replace the nutrients. Not all women can breastfeed. Not all women produce milk. Like there's so many variables in there where it's actually not that important. Kids will get
it
raised
is
either way. It
because we
can
have
be. It can establish bonds that are greatly important, but not necessary for a kid to grow up or be healthy or happy or anything like that.
okay now. Okay, I'm not even gonna bring this up, but so when you say, okay, if I had to choose between the mom breastfeeding or the father being in the child's life, are you talking about the father being, full custody or just half custody, or
What I'm
like just
saying
there?
is I don't think it's any more important for one parent to be around than the other. I think
Right,
both of
I
them are
wouldn't want to separate.
I think both of them are very necessary 100% of the time.
Yeah, but not for the first year though. Just the first
For the
year.
first year, yeah, for the first year, I think it's 100% necessary for the father to be around. Ask me why.
Okay, go ahead. I mean, I do too,
You know
but go
what?
ahead.
Do you know what postpartum depression is?
Yes, I went through it. Yes,
Yeah. What helps you get through it?
my husband,
Why?
because well, a kid, especially especially if it's like your firstborn, that is a lot of work. A lot of times, as women, we think that we can handle it, and sometimes, we just can't. And plus, like our hormones um, are going crazy, and so then we start to, think, certain things that aren't even true. I mean, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience,
Yeah.
and so yeah,
And
it helps when you have
that's
someone.
very accurate. That's very accurate what you said. And it was a good honest answer that you said that you needed your husband there. So maybe the husband is not responsible for um picking the kid up every day and breastfeeding them every day, but you need them there to support you in that situation.
Mhm.
You need a significant other there to support you, regardless of what people think. A two-parent household, regardless of if you do two moms, two dads, a guy and a girl, it doesn't matter. Two-parent households are more healthy than a single-parent household 100% of the time.
For sure.
It doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is. I don't care if they're married or not, but two structured adults need to be raising a kid because
Yeah.
it's just healthier. And so if the government incentivizes people to be single, it makes it detrimental to relationships as a whole. That's why if you look at uh, problems in Black communities, the biggest problem in Black communities are fatherless homes. And that's happened in the last 40 years. I think it's went up 30% or something like that in the last 40 years, fatherless homes in the Black community. And it's detrimental to society as a whole and Black youth as a whole. Like those type of things, whenever you start breaking up the home or the nuclear family is more based on mother, father, child. But I don't think the nuclear idea has to be mother, father, child. It could be any two parents raising a kid. And I think the two parents that are raising the kid should have opposing ideas. They shouldn't agree with everything down the board, because I don't think that would be normal either. I think it would make more sense if parents had different views about raising kids and conflicting ideas and they talked about them. And I think that would be more beneficial to any relationship rather than, oh, we disagree with each other. We agree with everybody all down the board. And we don't ever question each other or wonder why this is. I think two humans, healthy humans, questioning each other and working together to raise another life is what makes it successful. If that
Not
makes
too
any
much
sense. I don't know.
Yes, not too much disagreement, but like at least have like the basics, right? Like, the at least have sort of some of the same, values, right? You value kids, but then you may have different ways of parenting, and yeah, it
Exactly.
would work.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
because
because I mean, there's different ways to make friends, and there's
mhm,
different ways to attack 100 different problems. But all you have to know is this person that I'm with, that I'm committed to, is ready to work out these problems with me,
yes,
and we're ready to put our heads together and come up with solutions to these problems. And I'm not
yes,
going to tell this person that they're wrong. This person's not going to tell me I'm wrong unless we both need to be called on our shit. Like that's the kind of thing you need in a relationship, is two people that'll check and balance each other.
yes.
Because
I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, you're fine. I was
Yeah, I was
actually
gonna say,
I was actually going to tell you I should probably wrap up soon. I didn't realize I
okay.
was on for almost 6.5 hours.
I'm sorry, Jacob. I'm very sorry.
Oh
I
no,
was
no,
just
no!
gonna
It's not a problem at all. Like I said, I was just up gabbing for a while, so I appreciated you coming on.
I'll come on next time and a lot earlier. I
All
was just
right.
gonna say, I think that we, as um, a society, what we're one thing I feel like we're losing is the whole, the nuclear family, right? I feel like we don't value it as much anymore because now that there's a big push for marriage, not even marriage, just two people living together. But see, the thing is that while that's okay, but it doesn't. There's nothing to hold that couple down in case like and when they go through like obstacles, right? There's nothing to really hold them down. Like, and that was the whole point of a marriage certificate, because then, you know, if you can't just be like, okay, I can't stand you, I'm out here. Like, no, you can't do that. You're bind, and we need something to bind the couples down, before having kids. And, and we're slowly losing, well, yeah, there's people that's trying to, tell, uh, people that, oh, forget that. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I
I don't know if
do,
I can say
but
myself well.
I think the biggest problem and why we're separating from marriage is because of the religious tie with marriage. Um, I think if it was just a union between two people, I think it would be better if it didn't have the religious tie to it. Um, yeah, I think
I don't even care about the religion.
religion drags it down too much. Like if you think about in our lifetime when people talked about making gay wedding cakes and shit like that, and it's just like, no, that the sanctity of marriage was kind of established for religious people at the time. And then all of a sudden, gay people wanted to get married. And then the religious people were like, no, we started this. Why? You're not religious. Why should you be allowed to get married? And then there was also financial benefits to people getting married. Like I don't know, there's a lot of reasons why somebody would get married. So it depends on their sole purpose behind it. If it's,
Well, see, if
I
you're
don't know
for
if it's,
if you said yourself, Jake, that the most healthy thing for a child is to have two-parent household, right?
yeah. And I
Okay,
don't think
then,
somebody needs to, and I don't think somebody needs to be married to have a two-parent household.
but they're more likely to stay together if there's something there to bind them. You know, it doesn't have to be. You don't have
I
to,
don't think, I don't,
attach
yeah, I
belief to
don't,
it. It could just be
I don't,
culture.
I don't think, in order to get, an employee to stay working for a boss, I don't think I need to get them to sign a contract saying that they're going to stay with me. Um, I think if the situation's good and everybody's benefiting from it, then there would be no reason for them to leave. But I also wouldn't want to keep somebody around in a contract that they didn't want to be in, because I think people's feelings change all the time. And
Yeah, and
I
because of
wouldn't
that,
want somebody to, because I think that's something that happened with marriage when, um, back in the 50s and 60s, you saw a lot of wives in marriages because they didn't want to be exiled because they got a divorce. Even if if their spouse was hitting them or abusing them or something like that, they didn't want to put their name through a divorce because
it's not.
it was so
Mhm.
frowned upon. And
Yes,
I don't think, that's why I called it a contract. I don't think it should be so permanent like that. I think it should be, no, these are two people that are coming together to do a great thing. And as long as they want to be together doing a great thing, they can do that. If they don't want to be together, then they shouldn't stay together. There should be
yeah,
no
but the,
obligation. The only
well, yeah,
obligation that you guys have is raising a child. You don't have to do that under the same roof. You guys can raise a child separately. I do think it's more beneficial for two parents to be together, but if it's more toxic for you to coexist together than it is for, to be separate and conquer on your own, like you guys can both do great things on your own. But if when you're together, you're throwing shit at each other from one end of the house to the other in front of your kid, it's not beneficial. You know, it's just
yeah. I
it's a
mean,
balance with each. It's the balance with each couple.
everything you said, I agree. But then, when I said, when you need something to bind a couple, I'm not talking about like you're forced to be with someone like forever. A marriage certificate is an example. You could still get divorced if like it doesn't work out, but um, but uh,
In a lot of religions and places, you need a reason, and for the longest time, you needed a reason to get a divorce. That's what
yes,
adultery was presented at. Adultery was going outside of your marriage and talking to somebody else. Like that's the reason that they have that law, was for the sanctity of marriage.
yes, and I think we've lost that, right? In this country, that we don't value the nuclear family anymore. We don't value
But I think it's because we don't value religion. But I think that,
oh,
I think there's root issues to that. Like I think it's because marriage is a religious based thing, and we don't think of marriage
so you
and
want to
religion
talk
as
about
attached
religion then?
anymore. Well,
That's
my
what you
question is, because we also threw out common law marriage in the United States. Do you know what that is?
yes. Hmm.
Because me and my significant other we'd be common law married a couple times over, probably. I think we've lived together
Same
for
here.
over 10 years, and we've been together for, I don't know, since I was 16, something like that.
No,
But
same here. My
we're not
husband and I,
married.
I called him. See, we're not me. My husband, we're not legally married. But I call my husband um, because as part of my culture, he's considered, my husband. So I just call my husband, but we're not. We're not married legally. So yes, although it can work, but it can, work. Like we are a perfect example of that. But the reason why we're not we are bonded by my sort of my culture, though. You know, because see the things that feelings, emotions is a, as they say, it's a fleeting, it's a fleeting emotion, right? Like you could be in love one day and then not be in love, next day because you guys fought or whatever. But there has to be something there to keep the couples together, to stop the couple from like, you know what, fuck this shit, I'm out of here.
But I also think there's a balance. I don't think people should stay together just for the kids because I think the kids realize that. Like if they
Yeah,
don't
what happened
see,
to the two-parent household, the nuclear family, Jacob? What happened to that?
oh
I,
yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
think
not really. I'm not talking about extreme cases. I'm not talking about like if he hits or something like that, or cheating.
oh
I'm
no,
talking
no, no.
about
I
like
just think I
everyday
just think
stuff.
kids can generally just sense the love between their
Yes,
parents. And even if it's just little bickering back and forth, they can tell the difference if you're joking or not. Kids pick up vibes just like everybody
yes,
else does. So, I mean, you'll hear a lot of people say that, we stayed together for the kids or something like that. And it's just, it's not even always the healthiest thing in the long run.
right.
I
Because a lot
mean,
of times
you
they
have to
say,
have a,
sorry, Jake, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you just have to have more of a connection than it's just the kids. Like, there has to be more there. Otherwise, if your connection is the kids, then divide and conquer. There's nothing wrong with that. You guys can both thrive as individuals and not have to harm each other doing it. You don't have to put the other person down in order to make sure that your kid's excelling.
Yeah, that's a
I mean,
fact.
it doesn't do any good it doesn't do any good to talk shit about anybody at any time. Even if they're your worst enemy, at no point are you going to benefit from talking shit about them. I don't know.
Right.
At
But
least for
then,
me personally.
well, of course, like of course, I don't, yeah, I don't ever, yeah, I should say I don't ever because, of course, there's been a few times. I've been with him for 13 years, so yeah, there's been a few times where like we've gone, like into a little bickering and stuff, and yeah, sometimes you end up insulting him without realizing it. But but I try not to. But I always I try to be more aware and try my best to not ever do that. But then that's the thing, though, right? Even people who are very conscious or aware, like they'll slip out every now and then. And so imagine, the rest of the people who like um has poor, self control, and so I don't know, I just feel like there's because we can't really control people. Um, I feel like people they operate off of emotions, not ju- I know this, they like to say, oh, women operate off of emotions, but men operate off of emotions. You know
Oh
what I'm
yeah,
saying? And
yeah.
so
And
what
and
can
men
we use?
require different support than women do.
Hmm.
Like that makes them feel complete. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
there's certain things that men want out of a relationship, and it's not just sex. Like men want certain things out of a relationship that women don't want, and there's a lot of things, and it's all about. And I want to establish this with my kids and my significant other, if we haven't already. I think we already have, but the biggest thing is probably establishing healthy boundaries, no matter what kind of relationship you have, whether it's with a boss, whether it's with your kid, or it's just establishing your own boundaries and making sure that you implement them all the time and letting somebody know when they cross your boundaries. And if
Hmm.
they're not okay with your boundaries, then it's not a healthy relationship. Because if you could solve those problems, then there would be no variables for bad situations, no matter what
I
relationship it
agree.
was. But
I agree.
I don't know. There's so many things that tie into the whole dynamic with kids, and when you throw kids into the variable. But I think the biggest thing that people will need to figure out is like because it's not even like a physical abuse thing. If you're actually with somebody that's your best friend, they don't have to yell at you or hit you to know how to hurt you. Your best friend knows how to hurt you because they've known you forever.
Uh-huh.
They know things about you that nobody else knows. Like, and this only works for people that really know their significant other. Like my girlfriend could say things that hurt my feelings, and she knows she could because she knows where my feelings are. If
Hmm.
she knows about the things I care about, just like I feel like I know about the things she cares about. But the average person walking down the street wouldn't know what would hurt my feelings, you know? Just so my significant other wouldn't have to throw something at me to make me feel upset. Like she's like, ah, he would just what? Does she throw things at me? No.
Okay.
No, no. Um, but I don't know. I just don't think of like she's just not like a violent like you don't have to be a violent person in order to be in an abusive relationship. It's just anybody taking advantage of your boundaries. It doesn't have to be physical all the time. There's just like there's emotional abuse and everything else. All of those things are legit. People just deal with them on different levels, I guess.
Yeah, and usually that comes out when, when they feel like, yeah, they feel insecure, or they feel like, like they feel like they have to take care of it right away or whatever. They'll say the most hurtful things, and then they wonder why, if, like, say you start walking away, and then, it just, I don't know, like, people just, we all have different coping mechanisms. We all have, yeah, different
Yeah.
defense mechanisms. Some people don't even have, they never, like, learned any. And so, yet the most important thing is when you get into a relationship that yeah, you learn that about, well, you
Yeah.
learn that, hopefully you learn about yourself, and, you learn that about your partner. And, couples should
Well, and
focus on the end
hopefully
goal.
And hopefully, on a base level, you know yourself enough to go into any relationship, a
Yes.
working relationship, a dating relationship, even the relationship with your parents. You have to know who you are and what you mean to them, what you mean to yourself. Like, if you don't have a healthy respect for yourself, you can't have a healthy respect for others. It's impossible. Like, if you can't respect yourself, you definitely can't respect anybody else. I don't know.
That's a fact.
I don't know. It's so I feel like these are such simple answers, but they mean so much, and people don't explain because people are busy talking about, oh, boys just want one thing in life, and it's just like, yeah, they do, but you can catch them a mile away if you know how they're getting to said thing. It's all
Yep.
based on relationships and healthy things. Like you can pick out the bad eggs really quick because
Yes.
they shine. Usually, what happens is in a relationship, somebody compromises their boundaries or their needs in order to satisfy somebody else, expecting the other person to know that they let down their guard or gave up more than they normally would for this person. And they feel like they're doing a favor, and the other person doesn't even know the favor. And now they're already into something that they've compromised their own boundaries. It happens with work all the time. Like you'll see an employee do extra work that's not required in their job. And then all of a sudden, after a paycheck comes in, they're like, man, I do so much work around here. I wish the boss knew how much work I did. It's like, this part isn't even part of my job. It's just like, well, yeah, your boss doesn't even know you're doing that stuff. You just expect them to know that you're doing that stuff.
Hmm.
It's weird. It's every relationship. And it doesn't
Yep.
matter what kind it is. So strange. But
Yep.
anywho,
I agree.
I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna wrap
Of
up.
course. Mhm.
But you have a
Thank you
good
for having
evening.
me. You too,
Oh yeah,
Jacob. I
anytime.
promise I'll be back on.
Oh yeah, anytime. You're always welcome.
Thank you, Jacob. You have a good night.
Yep. Anybody still watching? I appreciate you guys tuning in and soon.
Yeah.